Welcome to Rob Schmitt tonight. In the final weeks of his presidency, Joe Biden commuted thousands of sentences, granted 39 pardons, and showed mercy on some of the most vile criminals in this country. Death row inmates were shocked to learn that they were no longer sentenced to die after committing horrific acts against innocent people. 37 men on death row got great news courtesy of the radicals who were controlling Joe Biden there at the very end. Kibani Savage murdered 12 people, including 4 little kids, when he firebombed the home of a witness to another crime that he had committed. Evidently, Joe Biden, we're told, felt sorry for Kibani, felt he deserved to live a full life despite taking that from 12 other people. Do you believe that? Regardless of your opinion on the death penalty, there's one thing that is absolutely clear, that Joe Biden was nothing like the former version of himself that we all watched in the Senate for a very long time. And the Joe Biden that voters elected, the moderate Pennsylvania Democrat, was not the man that ran the country. Here was Joe talking about those pardons on the last full day of his presidency at a Black Baptist church in South Carolina.
We lean into each other.
Yes, sir.
That's the sacred covenant of our nation. We pledge an allegiance, not just to an idea, but to each other. That's who we're pledging allegiance to. That's how I viewed my decision to issue more individual pardons and commutations than any president in American history.
It wasn't really himself, was he? We play this as an example to show just how different Joe Biden behaved as president when compared to the fiery and often offensive senator that we had watched for decades. In earlier years, Joe Biden was tough as nails on crime. He was much more socially conservative. He championed a crime bill 30 years ago that Democrats today would consider to be racist. Here is Biden before he became the Autopen president.
It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
Does that sound like a guy that's going to commute the death sentence of a man who murdered 12 people, including 4 little kids, later in life? We show you all this to re-emphasize the allegations that are being made as Bidengate widens, that Joe Biden was perhaps never fully the president of the United States, that he was gone when he entered the White House. Here was our current president earlier today.
Look, it's a very sad thing what happened, but we're going to start looking into this whole thing with who signed this legislation. Who signed legislation opening our border? I don't think he knew. I said there's nobody that could want an open border. Nobody. And now I find out that it wasn't him. He auto-penned it. Who was operating the auto-pen? He opened the borders of the United States of America. And I kept saying, who would do such a thing? Allowing criminals to pour in from all over the world. Who would sign this? Nobody would sign it. No sane person would sign it. You know who signed it? Radical left lunatics that were running our country.
No sane person would do what Joe Biden did for all 4 of those years. And as we know, Joe Biden at one point in his life was a fairly sane man. Even more confusing is Joe Biden was never a radical. Who gets more radical as they become a senior citizen? Have you ever seen that? You're supposed to get more conservative as you get closer to death. Life teaches you a thing or two. Biden's administration in his late 70s was the most radical one we have ever seen in the history of this country. And it's not even close. Biden's White House made Obama look moderate. Think about that. On a lot of different policies, including immigration. Joe Biden wasn't the president. He was the Trojan horse, manipulated by some very bad people.
They didn't want him, and they were disappointed in getting him because they wanted Bernie Sanders. And then after about 2 weeks, they said, wait a minute, this is a gift. He'll do anything. We're going to use the Autopen. And they used the Autopen and everything. He didn't approve this stuff because when Joe Biden was with it, he would never have approved it. You take a look, he would have never approved open borders.
So there you have the current president's perspective. Again, how amazing it must have been to be a part of the inner circle that was around Joe Biden in those final 2 years, realizing you weren't just close to power, you were the power. Lefties implementing their own policies via Joe Biden's Autopen, never elected, just in the right place at the right time, next to a president who eked his way in and then collapsed mentally soon after. Here's a look at some of Biden's final actions. Does any of these sound like the senator that we all watched from Delaware for all those years, a man from Pennsylvania? Deportation protection for 1 million, banning offshore drilling, commuting death row sentences, $74 billion for climate change, just shoveling money into this as fast as he could, forgiving $4 billion in student debt. This is as radical as it gets. The Heritage Foundation found the same signature on basically every document that Biden signed during his presidency. How many times was Joe's name signed and he had no idea that it was signed? Think about it. Who was running the country? Remember this story from Mike Johnson?
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? He looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country?
That's still just a wild story. I mean, it's the President of the United States. No clue that he had. I mean, think about the power of an executive order. How many lives that changes, how much industry that changes. He didn't even know. He had no idea. It's a surreal story partly because the emperor had no brain, but more so the cover-up of all of it as well. Everyone who made it possible for Joe Biden to stay in office for years in that condition. And a lot of people had to work at that. CNN's Jake Tapper right now is cashing in on all of that. He was part of the problem. His book is out today. He's doing nonstop media promoting it, pretending he's not part of the scandal, that he's just outside looking in. Here he was on Megyn Kelly's podcast.
There is a way of pressing a man like that on the actual infirmities to bring it home to him and to the audience, and you didn't do it.
That's correct. I didn't. And like I said, I feel humility about my coverage. I mean, it's not like I was asking him his favorite movie or his favorite color. We were talking about Putin. We were talking about other issues of national importance. But yeah, I mean, of course, I've said I look back at my coverage with humility. And I wish I did cover the issues of age and acuity, but I wish I had covered them much more.
Tapper's very media-trained answer there to absolve himself of the journalistically unforgivable. For more than a year, we watched Joe Biden collapse long before that big debate seared what he was into everybody's minds. Jake Tapper refused to acknowledge any of what we saw until the night of the debate. If you go by Jake Tapper reporting, Joe Biden was fresh as a daisy until Donald Trump knocked him out of the race, effectively. Ignoring the note cards, the scripted questions, the constant brain fog. I mean, how many different examples? So many weird, wandering answers, no answers, bizarre behavior in so many different ways. All of that was ignored. It all started the night of the debate in Tapper's mind. And Jake's book is selling fast because there's so many readers on his side that are desperate for something to blame for Trump's return. And this book is going to offer them that, and Jake Tapper's going to make a whole lot of money. Joe's granddaughter, though, Joe Biden's granddaughter, Hunter's daughter, the benefactor of all of those corrupt Biden deals that Hunter and Joe put together, is no fan of Jake Tapper's new book, calling it silly, calling it political smut, and calling Joe Biden so completely good and honest that this was all written at the expense of a man so completely good and honest. That from a young woman who had a fortune laundered to her by the Chinese because Joe Biden was so clearly not good and honest. And as Biden fights his spreading cancer, a reminder of Joe's cancer moonshot charity, as we talk about good and honest Joe Biden tonight, which brought in millions and millions of dollars and spent it all on high-dollar executive salaries, on parties, on travel. And you see there at the bottom in red, not one red cent going to research. You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.